All right, we're
And
live.
we are live. Welcome to the China EVs and More podcast. We will open the room up at around the 40-minute mark to anyone who's keen to ask us any questions. So feel free to post them in X, LinkedIn, or YouTube. In the next hour or so, my co host, Lei Xing, and I will go the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you smash those subscribe and like buttons so you don't miss anything from us in the future. Also, I'm confident that Lei and I are two of the most knowledgeable people in the world doing this. So help us get the word out to others about this show. My name is Tu Lee. I'm the managing director at Sinowato Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sector. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinowatoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, a frigid Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Well, the frigidity has gone past a, what should I say, a double dad duty
Oh my God.
pondering what could have
Oh.
been Lions diehard fan to
Oh. Oh.
this is
So much
episode of,
hope, so much hope, so much hope.
yeah, this
So,
your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 195. So the Lions game, I watched that game. A lot of fireworks. Just like it reminds me of the China EV and AV mobility space. Lots of fireworks, constant uh, things happening. Although recent days, because of the Chinese New Year coming up, it's slowing down a bit. But on the state side, we've had a week of fireworks from someone named Trump. So this is the backdrop of today's episode. And I know you touched upon Trump 2.0 in your newsletter, and maybe we start off there. Um, just talk about what has transpired and um, tariffs, right? I think the key word that it's all related to this China EV global trade. And Trump has been, I think, less on that department in terms of the fireworks of executive orders that he signed. Um, so we start off there, and we talk about what could happen in the coming days and weeks.
so I think what's important is kind of talking about the lead up to everything. And this includes the Biden administration, some of the things that they've done. So, to summarize at a very high level, they put in place a 100% tariff. There was already a 27.5% tariff from the Trump administration in 2018. And so this closed the door, but it was unlocked by the Biden administration because there's no language in there that says if you build them in Mexico or Canada, they'll still receive these tariffs. So, in addition to the 100% tariff, the Biden administration just put in policy restrictions on Chinese connected hardware and software. So, the software comes first and then the hardware. Now, the Trump administration got back into office on Monday. There's been a lot of rhetoric leading up to uh, Trump becoming our president again, including repeating and repeating and repeating an EV mandate that the Biden administration effectively jammed down Americans' throats.
I stopped you
And
right there.
so, okay,
There's no EV mandate, right? I think
yes.
EV mandate.
So there's no there's nothing in the policies that says mandate, but
That's yeah.
the EPA restrictions increasing significantly in 2027, the climate goals and the requirements leading up to 2030, where Biden had a goal, which he openly communicated, a 50% take rate on electric vehicles by 2030. That a lot of people saw this as a de facto EV mandate. And I can see why they would think that. Now, if we look at other countries, they've done the same thing. Norway, Europe to a certain extent, because Europe has their own climate goals. And it looks like because of the slowdown, again, not a shrinking of EV sales around the world, a slowdown in the growth of EV sales around the world. Now, 2024, there was 25% growth year over year. Most of that, or a good portion of that, in China, right? Like um, you need the government to intervene when you want these drastic changes to habits, buying habits of consumers, whether they're European Americans or Norwegians or Chinese. So
Yeah. Um, Staying on the door analogy, before Trump got into office, that door was locked and put on two locks. One of them is 100% EV tariff. The other one is ICV ban. So there are two locks. And then when he said yesterday on a video on the Davos, if you're gonna produce in our country, you get maybe zero to no tariffs or to low tariffs. If not, if you import everything into our country, we're gonna tax you um, some amount. And so that door with the two locks on seems to be from that statement, there's a small opening up. But then again, you think about it, like if I'm a Chinese automaker and I want to produce in the US, the ICV ban says particularly even those vehicles are made in the US, if they have the relevant pertinent software or hardware, it's banned. So it's like one defeat the other. So there's really nothing um, that's so positive of what could happen. So that's one thing, and the other one on the tariffs, I think, like I said, of all the fireworks, the tariffs seem to be hinging uh, with respect to China on a few names or a few terms: TikTok, fentanyl, and Elon Musk. And so we're still seeing that play out. I think he's hinted at the 10% from China and 25% from Mexico and Canada. But um, and earliest we could see this happen is February 1st, which a week, a little bit more than a week away. Um, so I think the other ones he's done what he's promised or what he wanted to do. All the other ones on immigration, gender, race, uh, all of those things. But tariffs
so
seem to be a wild card, sort of.
so
Eh,
this is the obvious thing about Trump. Go ahead.
No, and then I think if it's 10%, maybe we can see it as a slap on the wrist compared to, let's say, a 60% on all things imported from China. But I think whether it's 10%, 60%, at least on the China EVs, is a non-issue because I don't think they treat North America or at least the US as a priority anyways. So right? There's opportunities in the rest of
Well,
the world.
they want to treat
Yeah,
they
sure.
want they want to enter the U.S. in a bad way because they see the most opportunity here. To be quite frank, but uh, they also, I believe, and they know the Chinese government knows that the U.S. government works in 4 and 8 year cycles. And because of the long term planning the Chinese government does, sometimes they wait things out. And so they seem much more hopeful about coming to some sort of compromise with the Trump administration more so than the Biden administration. And that's very clear. And, you know, the other thing that has nothing to do with China, but has everything to do with China, is that if the USMCA gets blown up, Canada has tariffs and Mexico has tariffs on vehicles imported into the United States. Trump is effectively boxing everybody in and saying, you have to build in the US. Okay. So, case in point, Elkin, who is now the temporary CEO or leader of Stellantis, he put that $5 billion investment that Carlos Tavares had put on hold back on the table this week. Now, if you read the fine print, it's not new investment, it's investment that was taken off the table that was originally announced a year or two ago. And that just means more jobs in Detroit, more jobs in Ohio and Illinois. So, in a way, it's working because Elkin was quick to put those jobs back on the table. But an alarming number to me was that 40% of the vehicles that Stellantis sells in the United States are built in Canada and Mexico. So
Yeah.
if Trump is successful, we should have a good number of jobs back in the United States. Now, that's not necessarily good for the D3 because if the Chinese EV makers come in the next 4 years, it's going to dial up competition like you've never seen. Because we all know that there's going to be culture challenges, there's going to be labor challenges, there's going to be just management style challenges when these Chinese players come to the United States en masse. There's probably going to be labor shortage issue in the short term. So there's no immediate success that I see for a Chinese EV maker outside of importing quite a few vehicles, which is not going to be happening. So the what Trump is doing is he's accomplishing that. He's creating this uncertainty that is really forcing people to the table. Okay. Now the Chinese can wait this out, but I believe he's also wanting to have Chinese EV makers and battery makers say that they're willing to invest billions of dollars in the United States.
Yeah, so we look at the Trump 2.0 effect for China and for the US. So for China, I've heard recently a new term called the Trump stimulus, which is he's blocking off imports, let's say potential imports of EVs for now, for the foreseeable future. But within China, we know the economy, we know the new trade-in and scrap policy that's involving new millions and millions. Trump liked to say that millions and millions of
Biggest
vehicles.
ever. Biggest ever.
Yeah, China is a huge number that if this card is played right, and I posted the video from the CATL co-chairman who expected the take rate.
Well, take a step back. Press rewind because
Yeah.
you tweeted a few. So can you tell us who was at Davos from CATL and what your takeaways from his discussion was?
So this was the
And let me stop you there, Lei, because
Yeah.
SPX and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I meant 10% tariffs on um, Mexican-built cars coming to the U.S., Canadian-built cars coming to the U.S. That's what I meant, not in addition to the 100% Chinese tariff. So please proceed. Like,
So there was, this past week was the Winter Davos that's held
when are
every
we gonna host a podcast at Davos? Maybe next year.
hopefully. But I mean, Pan Jian, who is the co-chairman of CATL, okay, CATL, the largest battery maker in the world, they have about 37% of the market.
Printing
He,
money.
yeah, printing money. Well, they announced some big numbers, earnings numbers, but he was at a panel called "Getting EV Supplies Chains Right," and he, I think, shared some great insights, including he's expecting the take rate by the end of the year monthly to top 70%, and for the entire year to
In
top
China.
60%, in China to 60%. And he also predicted that LFP will in 3 years account for 70% of not only the EV battery, but the battery market overall. Um, and he just mentioned a lot of um, what China did, the kind of the private public sector, and why the rest of the world, why Western automakers are slow at um, the EVs, because they were missing that, what he terms as the EIV, which is electric intelligent vehicles. And China got the I part of it right. Well, they obviously got the E part of it right, but I think currently they're competing on I, obviously, right? So with this backdrop, and then thinking of Trump and back to the U.S., you mentioned about Stellantis. They're bringing some of the models back production, and they're delaying, I think, some of the Ram, right? That Ram 1500 EV has been, I mean, it's been announced for how many years already? And you talked about the take rate not even reaching 35% by the time Trump gets out, leaves office. And yesterday, the new Tesla Model Y broke the internet here in the U.S. Uh, so uh, I think in the U.S. market, it's unlike it's there's no way near what Pan Jian talked about, this public framework versus the private effort. And that's been many years in the making. I don't know if you read that Zeit article that our good friend shared about Wang Gang and Oliver Bluna talking about the early years and how China reached where it was. It's decades in the making, and we just don't have that in the U.S. It's just totally different, um, and that's
Well, I so
Biden tried to do it right with that kind of the so-called EV mandate and the IRA, right?
well, I
But
I still have to give uh, Tesla and Elon a lot of credit because they're the OGs on the E and the I and the EIV. Now, this is where the Chinese are probably a little bit like Japan, right? They didn't invent the electric vehicle, but maybe they perfected it or they are perfecting it, in present tense. And let's point back to our great conversation with Brian Gu, Dr. Brian Gu, who, and to his credit, patted Xpeng on the back, themselves on the back for saying smartification was going to be an area of opportunity. And he said this, what, 3 years ago, he said? And that's what we're seeing now. So that's, in other words, what the I is in EIV. Now, I didn't see the whole video from Davos, but that was one of the things I was like, well, Tesla needs to be given proper credit because guess
sure.
what? They still, one of the guys on Twitter, the guy who always updates the Tesla stuff, I forget his name, He has a beard. But anyways, he had like a list of updated features in the Juniper, and one of
Oh yeah,
them was
very
like
merit.
yes, and
Yeah,
then
I
one
saw
of
that.
them was like an updated metal casing on the door handle, and I just started
No,
laughing, man.
no, I think Tesla Model Y is the best selling vehicle in the world. Obviously, it's going to get all the attention because I mean, it's. I was looking at it, right? That they have this launch edition, and like they make it's more expensive, but they also make it quite enticing.
It's going to be $60,000
Yeah,
pre incentive, pre subsidy in the U.S., and it's probably going to be on the roads within the next 2 months.
well, delivery start in March, so
Yeah, I say the
yeah,
next 2 months.
so yeah.
So
Uh,
we're already seeing videos of trucks, trailers with junipers in China. I think Europe is going to launch next. So does so is this where Elon sees the 30 or 40% growth? Remember he said that in one of the earnings reports for 2025? I don't know if the
yeah,
Juniper can support that
uh,
itself.
likewise, totally agreed. Um, yeah,
So
but
they
you do,
either have
yeah.
something up their sleeve, a Model 2 or something, because
Well, the
30% is substantial. It's substantial. It's a lot.
well, yeah, the cyber cab. What becomes of the cyber cab in terms of Model 2, right? I think that there's still a wild card this year.
Yeah.
But the attention so right now is all on Model Y, the new Model Y, and that
They're
alone, of course, is not going to get you the 30 to 40% growth.
so that means suppliers in China, likely in Europe and the United States, are working overtime to fill the supply chains so that the Model Y doesn't ramp like this, it ramps like this.
Yeah.
Um, man, it's such an interesting time, huh, Lei? And in a couple of months, we'll be going to
Uh,
Shanghai, and
Well, actually, as a matter of fact, less than 3 months left. Media Days, April 23rd. I had that date in my head. Today's January 24th, less than 3 months. And
um,
the other thing on the Tesla this year, critical for the Chinese market, not only the new Juniper, but the FSD approval,
right.
which I predict they will get. But um, when that they get it, how does that compare? We were talking about this, with another friend of ours. The urban ADAS NOA game is very cutthroat, uh, and it could be one of the stories of the year if they get the FSD approval. But how do they compete actually on the ground in actual situations? Um, that's something to see. It's the gold standard here in the U.S., but in China, there's several gold standards among several brands.
They'll
Definitely not Tesla.
see
Yeah.
they'll see a significant sales bump once FSD gets approved in China. Now, will it be the full version? Will it be a derivative of the Western version, US version? It remains to be seen. Obviously, the data centers need to be in China and all that good stuff. But, you know, um, that's that's linchpin to Tesla's growth strategy, obviously. And Elon has said it himself, right? It's not about car sales, it's about the AI part of Tesla's product plan. So if it doesn't happen this year, which is unlikely, as it stands right now, I'm not hearing significant pushback. I haven't heard really anything about the approvals, but we wouldn't expect anything to happen in the next couple of weeks just because of Chinese New Year, which is January 29th. But it's just a really, really interesting time. And this coming, it, let's switch gears and go back to the United States. Ford had announced increased sales on the EV side. GM had announced increased sales on the EV side. So this could be a really crushing blow for Ford and GM in the U.S. if Trump takes away those $7,500 subsidies.
Well,
And
same
go
for
ahead.
Tesla. I mean, what do you think, right? There's been talk, whether it's good for Tesla or bad for Tesla. Right now,
I'm just taking Elon's word for it. Elon says we don't need them. So so all I can do is point to what he said. Now, I agree with you. Yeah, a $60,000 car that turns into a $52,000 car, that makes a difference to me.
which
So,
which the launched edition currently enjoys.
and all the while, the Cadillac Lyric V gets launched yesterday. So
GM put out a teaser yesterday in their Steve Hill's New Year message. I think it might be the Vistique, the large SUV that will come out in China this year with similar urban NOA features thanks to a company called Momenta.
Momenta.
Yeah.
So,
So that game is everybody's gonna compete.
and what did I
If you
say?
want
There's
to,
going to be two stacks.
yeah, yeah.
There's going to be the Super Cruise stack. Is it called Super Cruise or
No, no.
Chow Zamisua Cruise?
Well, yeah. Well, I think they're gonna use a different kind of
Yeah,
term or something.
yeah. So there's GM Super Cruise, which is a consolidation and an amalgamation of Ultra Cruise, Cruise, and Super Cruise. And then the China stack is Momenta, which GM has, what, 5 years ago invested $400 million in. So not a lot being said about that, is it? At least in the North America side.
Mm.
But that's an important. We had mentioned this in past podcasts. Having a significant, not an insignificant, a significant, because insignificant to me is Tesla Autopilot. Significant is FSD. So having a significant player in the intelligent, or having a significant intelligent driving system in China, it's not a differentiator, it's a qualifier.
Yeah.
So Cadillac, if they want to continue to be the premium American brand in China, need to be in that game, and that's what they're doing. So, and believe me, I don't think that, because in the United States, that Vistique, or I think it's called Vistic. I don't know. I was corrected, but I keep on saying Vistique. Uh, it's like $90,000. It's unbelievable. I don't believe it's going to be $90,000 in China because it would never sell, ever.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
So Steve's a smart guy. Our friend Will's really smart guy. So they know, and I'm sure they're trying to sharpen their pencil. But how much Warren pushes back, we'll see. But anything
So
else?
yeah.
What do we want to talk about next?
No, I just think back to the Trump a little bit. I think the best word to describe currently China and the U.S. is lukewarm. It's not icy, it's not warm, but it's because Trump. I mean, he bashes on China at the same time. Right before he got into office, he had that conversation with Xi, and he's like, we want to work together. We want to, uh, and Xi
Well,
sent. Like, I mean, like this dynamic is it's not as um, I think his advisors will have him think a little bit more on this relationship, rather than just you know, like what he's done with the other executive orders.
But the thing is, Lay, is that I think the foreign governments that deal with the Trump administration kind of know that he's this blustery guy on its face, but then his team will create back channels
Sure.
because, and they'll use those threats that he's saying in public as kind of negotiating points. Okay. And then really quickly, Lay, just an update on the U.S. Embassy. So obviously, I forget his name now, the U.S. ambassador to China, he's
Burns.
leaving. Yeah, Burns. Perdue, who is the former senator of Georgia, one of the senators for Georgia, he's going to be the new ambassador. I think he comes in a week or 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. And one of the points I made in the newsletter, Lay, is that his first time around, Trump, when he entered office, it was just a mess. It was unorganized. It was a free for all. He didn't know who was in charge of what, but
Well,
this is
still kind
where
of
he's
is.
brought pros in.
Well,
He's, on his first day, he did all these executive actions or executive orders. And so he's learned from his past and he's put these people in. Now, I'm not endorsing his policies and I'm not against his policies. All I'm saying is that they seem to have much better understanding of what needs to be done and how to get it done, as opposed to his first time around, where he just kind of felt like he was building the plane as he flew it. And we can see, and this is really important, the first major investment announcement that the Trump administration makes is about AI,
yeah.
and it rewards his Silicon Valley, um, let's say, supporters. Okay,
Expos.
so
Yeah.
and remember, at his inauguration, Bezos was there, Zuckerberg was there,
Cook.
Tim Cook was there. Um, who's the Google? So
Sundar
Pichai
Pichai.
was there. I was the Microsoft there.
No, he
I
wasn't
didn't
there.
see him. Yeah, and
But the
so
CEO of TikTok was there.
yes,
Joe
Shouza
Suchi.
Chu.
Joe Suchi. Yeah.
So
uh,
it this should tell you that his priority is not manufacturing in the United States. And Masa was there.
well, it is. I mean, right? You got to manufacture in the U.S. or else you're
Well,
gonna
so
tariff.
manufacture data centers, because AI is going to need a lot of servers, a lot of data centers. So surprisingly, Jensen Huang wasn't there. So
Well, he was in China. He was in China giving out red pockets.
so for our audience, Lay, please tell everyone what traditions are for Chinese New Year, because I'm ethnically Vietnamese. We also celebrate Chinese New Year. Our
Well,
cultures and traditions are a little bit different, but one of the things that we share from a culture standpoint are the red envelopes or the hongbao. So can you tell us some of the other? So tell us what a hongbao is and some of the other things.
well, just a red packet or hongbao is you give it to your kind of kids or family, kids in the family, as a kind of a auspicious way to, wish them luck
And there's money
and
inside.
have some spending money, right? So usually here in the stateside, um, in China, 100 RMB bill is nothing, right? Here we actually give $100 bills, so it's
Well, remember in the booming days in China, the CEOs and managers would give red envelopes to
yeah,
all of their staff with 100
yeah.
RMB
Now,
in it.
now usually you don't do it physically, you do it
Yeah.
digitally. You
Yeah,
do it
yeah,
on
yeah.
WeChat.
Yeah. With WeChat Pay,
Yeah,
right? The
WeChat.
digital home bao.
Digital
So
Hongbao, yeah. And so if you look at this past few days, all of these China EV/AV mobility related brands, their official accounts have been pushing out digital red packet designs, especially Chinese New Year designed packet that you can download and use to send digital packets to other people, showing this is a way of marketing, right?
yeah.
Um,
And
so
Xiaohongshu
every
is
everything is
really,
red
really,
these days. Everything is red. And actually,
especially the little red note, the little red
speaking
book.
of red, did you see the night of the inauguration where they had the parade inside the Capital One Arena? That scene with the red and the white stars. I was like, what's going on? This feels like a some kind of a Chinese convention or something.
Oh, I have not watched the news a lot recently, just because I'm on daddy duty, as you know, and this week there were 2 snow days, and not because of snow, Lay, but because in Celsius it was minus 20 degrees here in Michigan. It was
Yeah, here
about
was as well.
1 degree, 2 degrees. So luckily, I have a half bath in my laundry room, and the toilet wouldn't flush and the faucets wouldn't work. So I was super worried that the pipes burst, but they did not. So lucky about that. But in Vietnamese, we call Chinese New Year Tết, so or Tet. You know,
What?
if you hear an American person or a Western person say Tet, you actually say Tết in Vietnamese. And if I may, Chinese New Year is basically celebrating the start of spring, because the Chinese use the lunar calendar, and the lunar calendar for the start of spring changes every year. And again, this year, January 29th is New Year's Day. Now, a northern habit which we're going to miss this year, and I really, really, I thought it was kind of insignificant when I was early years in Beijing, but I do want, rolling the dumplings with the fillings and then eating them with the vinegar. I'm gonna miss that this year, and we're not gonna be able to do it with the boys. So it's unfortunate. We'll go to a restaurant and eat some dumplings for sure. But but that's a northern thing, right?
Yeah, that's always the one thing. And the other thing is really we talked about fireworks. Well, this is when the real fireworks happen. uh, that's another
So I know
but
we're not talking about the podcast, but I think a lot of our viewers will still enjoy this. I moved to China in 2009, and the first Chinese New Year that I had, first of all, the Mandarin Oriental off of Third Ring Road, that was supposed to be the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, it caught on fire,
oh yeah, okay,
and
right
it's
next to the
in
CCTV tower.
CCTV building. So that was the first
Wow.
year that I
Yeah.
lived in China. And then we went to my wife's grandma's, and then we drove home. And on third, this is in 2009. And so there were no regulations yet about where you could light firecrackers or fireworks. So I look at things distinctly. Fireworks, there's no pop. Firecrackers, there's a pop. In China, everything pops. And the vendors will sell boxes like as big as a desk that have all kinds of fireworks. And so we're driving home on Third Ring Road at around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I have to avoid big boxes in the middle of this highway because people are on the side of the road lighting these big boxes, and
I remember
they
that.
are literally within 10, 20, 30 feet of these huge buildings. And so we go to our high rise at Xincheng Guoji, and I look out. We're probably, I think, when at that time we were living on the 28th floor or something like that. I vividly remember it, looking out, and just seeing the fireworks almost eye to eye to me. And I thought it was like the most surreal thing because people were on the street, Jintong Donglu, right? Just lighting fireworks up. Now, as the years went on, they pushed it farther and farther out, so you could not do fireworks inside of
Fifth
Fifth
ring.
Ring Road,
Yep.
Fifth
Mhm.
Ring. So, but those things make me smile because that was like the Wild Wild West days where it was like, whoa. Anyways, man.
Yeah.
Um, so getting
Good
back
memories.
to talking about cars, um, I sent you the post of my brother sent me. So in
Go
Grosse
ahead.
Pointe, Michigan, there's a dealership, a GMC dealership that had a post that wanted to get rid of their Hummer demos. And so that dealership, if you leased a demo Hummer for $850, they threw in a terrain. And so my brother, who was driving a Yukon XL, which is a Suburban effectively, he turned that in early and got this Hummer. And then yesterday, he's texting me and he's like, "Hey man, what what charger did you buy for your garage? And he's asking me all these questions because
Uh,
like I don't know if it was like this. I don't know how much he was doing research, but he went from a petrol engine vehicle to an EV, and I'm like, that's a huge battery. So you better get that charger for your garage sooner than later, or you're going to be sitting at a charger for a long time when you charge up. But um, we're still seeing deals, Lay, for electric vehicles in the United States.
so I have a little bit more than one more year left on my loan. Will be up in 2026. So I'm gonna, see this year kind of simmer a bit and see what happens to the tax credit, what Tesla does with incentives, and I'm definitely looking, for the next vehicle, an EV here, um, because I actually want to really try the FSD out. I mean, that launch edition that included everything, right? Um, Actually, is quite enticing, but um, we'll see. And putting our consumer hat on. Um,
Well, as the here's the other thing too, as the pipeline gets filled of the Juniper Model Y, you're probably going to see some deals for current model year or last model year Model Y to get those out the door. So for those that are in the market, probably in the next 1, 2, 3 months, you might see some smoking deals for current body style and current Model Ys.
yeah, some of the
So
inventory I saw were, $32,000 for a long range all-wheel drive, new.
yeah, so
Yes, that's
um,
cabbage price, right? As we say,
yep.
cabbage
But
is another Chinese New Year tradition. Used to be when people would buy these cabbages and save them in their houses uh, in the winter.
yes, I know
Right?
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Let me
Uh,
see here. I'm gonna check my trusty old newsletter. Oh, jeez. Anything else you want to talk about while I'm doing this?
no, I think January we're anticipating in terms of sales, a low, slow month, um, based on the weekly numbers that have come out. Um, but and we'll hear, you know, by the time February 1st comes around, we'll see those posters. Kaiman Hong is usually what these companies want to achieve, which is with starting off the year with a bang.
Yep.
End of the year with a bang and want to start off the year with a bang.
I think the other important thing to note, Lay, is that the Chinese government or the automotive body where the Chinese
I think
government is looking at prices increasing this year for Chinese electric vehicles. So um, that just
may-
means that the price war has taken its toll on
I
some companies.
I think ever since the week we were in CES, when the state council officially announced the expanded trade-in and scrap policy, over recent weeks, there's been press conferences emphasizing on the trade-in incentive and stabilizing economy, uh, encouraging battery swapping, some kind of a new framework for battery swapping. Um, uh, I think that's the message that's been given. Um,
So we're
so,
starting to see basically we're starting to see a bit of maturity coming out of the market, at least in the tier one cities.
well,
I
also,
think
I think in terms of the price war, so far it's not as been as fireworks as 2023 and 2024. Uh, I think the new Model Y obviously is a new, both in China and the US, has been a talk of the town.
once
Um,
we see more Model Ys on roads in Shanghai, you better
yeah,
believe that the Chinese EV makers coming out of Chinese New Year are going to lower price on competitor uh, products to the Model Y, and that should ignite or reignite the slow part of the sales season. And I would say March, early April, we'll start to see more companies cut price on B class crossover SUVs. Avatar, Geely, Xpeng, maybe on the G6, kind of lower price to make a tough decision for the Chinese consumer.
yeah.
Now, we the interesting thing, and I don't have any research, but I don't know how many buyers, let's say out of 10 that want to get an EV in China, are tried into, I'm going to buy a Tesla, full stop. And then how many are like, okay, the Model Y is part of my consideration, but I'm also looking at a G6. I'm also looking at an ES6. I'm also looking at um, uh, a Li Auto L6, a BYD Han, or Tong. But that would be interesting to note, how many Chinese consumers buy it because it's a Tesla. I haven't seen any research like that, but uh, eh, we'll see what by the end of summer, uh, how much we think the Model Y Juniper is going to help Tesla sales, at least in China. So
Well, I mean, the measuring stick will be maintaining last year's levels, which would
I
be,
think that's a loss.
yeah,
I think that's a loss.
yeah.
If they can only maintain last year's levels, then they probably are lower than their internal forecasts. The last thing, Lay, we should take a few minutes, first of all, to thank Dr. Brian Gu for sitting down with us at CES. My apologies. We meant to get this video out last week, and we'll do a much better job.
Well,
I just got to
we,
create a better process for doing this.
we should share the backstory a little bit because we had originally planned to interview him right before NVIDIA's keynote, Jensen Huang's keynote. But, you know, Vegas traffic,
So let me add to this. So we were at the Mandalay Bay. This was during press day, and I think Mandalay Bay was only for press day because then you would go to the conference center or you would go to the
yeah,
Venetian on the following days.
yeah.
And so we got out of a press conference, and then we were walking what seemed like an endless line, going to meet our contact at Xpeng, who was with Brian Gu. We were going to meet them at the Starbucks where the casino ends and the conference center begins at the Mandalay Bay, and you take over again.
Yeah. So and then I mean he was running late and he was trying to. Uh, he was a VIP obviously because the former head of autonomous driving, Dr. Wu
Shinju.
Xinzhou, is now the head of one of the heads of automotive at NVIDIA. And then later on, he showed a picture of him sitting right next to Wu. So and then it was like, okay, let's prioritize your schedule first. And so we ended up, which turned out to be better. We ended up at the Expo Aero HT booth with the little conference room, which was, I think,
Well,
better.
we should also mention that you had in your mind an area where we were going to stand and interview Brian, but then it was just so many people and it was so
Yeah,
loud
it was
that
taken over. It was like a concert, right? It was like right before the entrance into a concert. So that was not going to work. So yeah, and
um
and really I mean, it was we really didn't prep him with any questions beforehand. It was right. It was what we thought of. Some curveballs we threw at him, but I think that's the value of it. And he was, quite frank and prepared, and yeah,
um so we sat down with him in a small little conference room at the Aero HT booth. We focused on reflections of 2024, his internet or Xpeng's international expansion, the smartification of the industry in China, and what he saw next for Xpeng. Answers to those questions, you got to watch the podcast. So when you're watching it, hit the like and subscribe button because we are reawakening our China EVs and More Max episodes, and we'll try to get a couple more interesting guests for you in the near future.
yeah,
But
yeah,
please leave your comments if you have any uh, comments. And yes, we did our best with the recording. The audio sounds pretty good, but the video, um, we're still learning about this stuff. But because Lay and I aren't professional content
well,
creators, so
I mean, we try.
hey, one question from Mike, the car geek. Read a report about BYD hiding debt used to support its suppliers. Did you hear about this, Lay?
No,
GMT Research reported it in Bloomberg. Any thoughts on this?
I haven't heard about it.
So
So
I saw the article, but I haven't read up on it. The one thing that's important here is that um, they, yeah, I can't accurately uh, give you my take. I'm going to read the article and take a closer look at the report. But if that's the case, then um, BYD's balance sheet is uh, pretty significantly negative. But again, I don't want to speculate too much.
uh,
I'll read more. But this is the first I'd heard of it when I saw
yeah,
the
I
article
think
or
when
someone
you
sent it to me.
become the bullseye, when you become the number one NEV automaker in the world, uh, you're the bullseye, and all the scrutiny is going to come at you, and and that's where I think it's getting tougher when you go to 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, when become number one. Uh, these things are going to come up, and I don't know the specifics of it, but um, there's also about Warren Buffett selling stakes. I don't know if it means anything at all. Uh, it, at the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter as far as BYD is concerned. Um, it, it's just that when you hit a scale for anyone in the Chinese market, in the global market, Volkswagen, Toyota, nobody stays on the top forever. Um, and that I think that's we saw this in the Chinese NEV market, right? Li Auto could be leading the weekly sales for many, many weeks. And then all of a sudden, Xpeng took over for a week. Not wanting to emphasize it's all that important to look at the weekly numbers, but that shows you how difficult the market is. And So yeah, I think BYD is going to have a new approach this year. I think on the ADAS side, they might have some things up their sleeve. I think they're working with DJI on standardizing like Momenta for GM, on standardizing the urban kind of the ADAS features. Um, so um, yeah, that's,
I'm gonna do a bit more digging, and if I hear anything further about this, um, I'll try to comment, and I'm sure Lei will do some research as well. But all right, man. Next week is Chinese New Year. It's a normal week for us though. So
yeah, we
uh,
can. Yeah, I mean,
for
if
some
it can still happen
reason,
in the rest of the world.
I scheduled the live show, but that link that I sent, it didn't work.
Okay.
So this creates a different link to YouTube. So I don't
Uh-huh.
know. So I
Well,
need
we'll
to
still
figure
learn.
this out. I need to figure this
Yeah.
out. But
Yeah.
everyone, as always, thanks for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I would say go Lions, but they're out now. So on to the Pistons, who are playoff contenders. Anyways, Lei, I'll catch you on DMs, man. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, and last episode of the Year of the Dragon. Goodbye, everyone.
Yes, the year of the dragon before the year of the snake.
Yeah,
So,
my year.
bye.
Bye bye.
All right. Okay, let's make sure it